Hey, friends, welcome back to the Called to Lead podcast. So, today we're going to be tackling a bit of a tough subject, and that is for those of you who might be feeling like your business is going backwards. So, some of the reasons that might be making your business go backwards are within your control, are not within your control. But today we're going to be addressing 5 issues or circumstances that might be present or have been present in the past in your business that could have contributed or might be contributing to your business not being where you want it to be. So if you're feeling like you're not growing at the rate that you'd hoped, or maybe your team's not duplicating, or maybe your paycheck or your rank is going backwards, hopefully these 5 reasons will be helpful for you. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of inspiring quotes as well that hopefully can kind of help you get right back on the path so that your business can not just get back to where it is, but soar above and beyond that, because I truly believe that is possible for you by shifting your focus slightly on these key areas. So let's dive into today's episode. Okay, so let's dive into this tough conversation, because some of the things I'm going to share might not be popular opinions, but they are things that I have seen to be evident in the teams on my team. I've got about 4,500 teamies, but I'm a part of a bigger team, and I'm pretty in tune with what's going on in our big company of about 25 or 26,000, something along that lines in the US and Canada. So whether you're in Saint like me or you're in a totally different network marketing company, there are certain aspects right now that absolutely are completely out of our control that likely are contributing to your business not being like it once was, especially if you joined your business pre-COVID. This is a completely different world, right? But there's other things that we can't control, right? Like the economy. And I got an email actually from a trusted kind of industry person that's actually not in the network marketing industry, but she's a business person. And it kind of said that there's like this underlying feeling of like something's different out there. Like things aren't maybe like they have been in the past. And so you have to kind of try new things and do new things. But whether it's the economy, whether it's trying to recover from a post-COVID world where everyone was held captive to their phones and pretty much anybody could win just by putting themselves out there on whatever social media platform. Also, the rise of TikTok, Instagram Reels, things like that have exploded, and the market has gotten really crowded, whether it's an online influencer or a network marketer. There's just more people doing it, right? And so these are things that are not within your control. And the reasons that I'm going to talk about today are the things that you will know when I say it, if this is something that's impacting you now, or if it's something that you've maybe done in the past that has contributed to where you are now. And I'll kind of talk about why on some of those things. But the cool part is the advice that I'm going to give, it's based on some amazing quotes that I did not write that are true buckets of wisdom that can help you shift your focus on to what's possible in your business, despite the fact that there's all these uncertainties, things out of your control, and the things that are within your control that we're going to dive into today. So just to preface this, some things are out of your control. We're not going to be addressing those things. We're not going to talk about the corporate things that could be impacting your business. We're not going to talk about the economy. We're not going to talk about the network marketing industry. Those are all a totally different podcast that actually I interviewed Brett Blake, who is a network marketing legend and industry leader. He's amazing, and he works with he is working on the boards of multiple companies right now, but he has worked with dozens of some of the biggest companies out there. So he's really got a handle on the state of the network marketing industry. So I'll link to that recent episode if you missed that one, because that will address more of kind of like what's going on in that. But today's is going to be all about you and your business, what that has looked like in the past, what it looks like right now, and how decisions that you've made or are going to make in the future will impact your business moving forwards, which is always the goal, or moving backwards. So let's start out with reason number 1. And that one, it's really simple, and it's based on a quote from Zig Ziglar, which is, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. So the first reason that your business might be going backwards is you might not have a clear focus or a clear vision for what you actually want out of your business. You might just kind of be taking it day by day. And while network marketing can be fun, I mean, playing with makeup and doing the things, like it definitely can be fun. But if you're not treating it like a business with clear goals and clear things that you're working towards, you're not going to be moving forward in your business. And sometimes you can move backwards because you don't have something that you're working towards. And I think I talked about this on a recent podcast episode. At church a couple of weeks ago, our pastor was talking about the parable of reaping and sowing. And it essentially talks about like the fact that sowing seeds, like planting the seeds and reaping the rewards, it always takes time, right? But it's also matters like where you're planting those seeds. So if you don't, like, for example, for me, I always have very, very clear goals in all areas of my business, my life, my marriage, our family, my spiritual life, all of those things. I have very, very, very clear goals that help me really stay focused on what it is that I want in that area. And if there's a shiny object that comes my way that doesn't fit into that, then I don't worry about that, right? Like I focus in on what that looks like. So for example, for me, I know that YouTube and in-person classes are two ways that I can really build my business. They've been effective for me. There's something I enjoy. I just did an in-person class last night. It was so much fun. It was a little bit of a late night again, but I love it. And it's always so much fun to get together around doing what I do. And so instead of my focus or my goal, like it once was, being to try to do all the things and try to like, be consistent on Instagram and grow a huge following there and do an affiliate link thing with Launch and, trying to like also do the in-person stuff and also focus on my team. What I've learned is if I laser focus in on one clear goal or one clear vision for a month, for a season, like maybe a quarter or for a year, then I'm always going to be knowing exactly what I'm working towards. I'm going to be knowing if I'm seeing results towards whatever that is. And I'm going to then know if I need to kind of course correct or learn more or, kind of tweak or figure something out to do better in that area. So again, I mentioned like in the past, I was trying to do all the things. Now I'm simply focusing on growing my YouTube channel. I took a course and am still kind of taking that course in order to do it most effectively. I am seeing progress and it's super exciting to watch it grow and get the feedback, and it's awesome. But that's an area of my focus, right? Like that's my area for where I have a clear goal for where I want to grow. And it's a big goal too. I want to have 100,000 followers, and I believe it's possible. Right now I have about 1,100, so I've got about a long way to go. But I believe that I can get there, and I think it could even happen this year by me being continuing to be consistent. So I have a clear goal, and as I'm working towards that goal, my personal sales are growing. And so I'm seeing growth, and my personal business is not going backwards, it's going forwards because I have a clear something that I'm working towards, and I'm not getting distracted by the things that don't fit in that goal. Same thing. Now that I've had the taste of a recent reward trip, I am going to be working towards that. So I would love to go on our bonus trip this fall, and it's going to be a Mediterranean cruise. And so I'm laser focusing in on ways that I can improve my personal sales because, again, that's something in my control. That's something that I know will drive my business forward. And again, it's something that brings me joy. And so I'm working on that again through my YouTube, but also through in-person because it has just been proven to do it. Whereas YouTube, it's a little harder to know what to expect with that. So the first reason your business might be going backwards is because you lack having a clear goal or a clear focus for what you're working towards specifically in your business. So ask yourself that question. Like, do you know exactly what you're working towards? Do you have clarity for exactly how much you want to sell or how big you want your team to be and how many you want to personally enroll to get towards that? Do you know what it takes to get to your next rank? Have you looked at, like we call them the growth guides, or we used to call them bubble charts, like to see exactly the structure of what's possible? If you don't have that clear focus, that clear goal that you're working towards, you're not going to be moving forwards. And a lot of times, you might be stagnant for a while, but you're going to be moving backwards. So I'm going to challenge you to set a clear goal, a clear focus, get prayerful to the Lord about it. He will show you. And if it's something that's just like kind of like it's right there in your heart, it could be from Him. And so pray about it and know that it could be totally possible for you. So that's the first reason, is not having a clear, focused goal. So the second reason, and this is kind of tied to that, is if you are like focusing on a million different ways to try to grow your personal business, The second reason your business might be going backwards is if you're trying to do more than one network marketing company at a time. So, Bob Heilig just did an amazing podcast on this. I'll also link to that in the show notes. But essentially, if you decide to do what a lot of people are doing right now, so this is definitely an unpopular opinion, okay, where people are even being recruited by saying, oh, this product totally complements this other product. You can sell them both and you can make more money, right? So a lot of people feel like they can grow their business or move it forward by adding in an additional product or additional company into what they're sharing on social media or sharing out there. But what I see time and time again, and until somebody can show me otherwise, outside of a like 0.01% influencer, which is I think what Bob also said, who already has a huge following, who is basically could sell ice to Eskimos, right? And whose people are probably excited to see something new. If someone can show me that someone can have success doing multiple companies and also not having the problem of people on their teams being confused about like, okay, well, wait, why is she doing multiple? Like, where's her focus? Like, where's where, again, going back to your goal, like, what is her goal? Like, do I need to join this company too? Like, what's going on? Also, it's even if you're just sharing that product, it's like picking up a baton, right? Like if you pick up this pen, if you're watching on YouTube, if you pick up the one side, you're also picking up the other side. So if you're picking up the product, you're also picking up where you will have people that will want to join you in business, especially if you have a really, really big following. And that creates a ton of confusion and division because it might not be somebody on your team. And it's not compliant to directly, and I think this is with any company, it's certainly within ours, and it's definitely not the right thing to do to go and try to prospect someone from, anybody other than your directly enrolled artist. But people are going to naturally come to you if you have that big following and if you join that. Now, if you don't have the big following, and again, I did a whole episode on this as well recently, but if you don't have that big following, they may not come to you, but you're going to lose some of that trust with your existing customers, your existing followers, and you might honestly feel like kind of like a door-to-door salesman. There's this hilarious video that I'm going to have to find and post in the show notes. Y'all, it's so good. It's from years ago. It was right, I think, after COVID hit. And it was this guy who was like selling jewelry and like pots and pans and plants and all this stuff. And it's like, you don't want to be that girl, okay? And so going back to the first one, if you're not focused in on one product that you love and you're trying to divide your time and energy to serving two different customer bases with two different sets of systems, with two different uplines coming at you, especially if you're doing well in one, like they're going to be like, oh girl, you should run with this here. You're doing great. You're so close to the next rank. Well, that's awesome. Good for you. But like, which one are you going to go for? Like, because dividing your time and energy, and that's any good business book will tell you that. Like I'm reading 10X is easier than 2X and Traction, which is all about developing an entrepreneurial operating system for yourself. And both of those business books in particular talk about the importance of getting laser focused on what's most important in your business. And so if you're trying to do more than one company, if your business hasn't already gone backwards, meaning your personal sales in your first company that you joined, your team sales, because they're kind of like watching which I'll get into the next one here. Their business might not be growing because of the next reason that we're going to share. But I want you to ask yourself, how is this impacting your existing business? Because I hear a lot of times people will say, oh, well, this is my main thing. Like, this is where my heart is. This is where my focus is. But then they'll go try to divide their energy with adding the other thing. And then that business starts to slip. And sometimes they're doing it as like to try to spread their eggs in multiple baskets or to kind of, how do I say this? Like just have a safety net, if you will, just in case this one, like the first one doesn't do as well as you'd hope. So you try to, put your eggs in both baskets. Well, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for that first company and for that first set of your team. So just keep that in mind. I always encourage if you decide that you have a new product that you just believe is amazing and you want to go all in there, go all in there. Even if that means leaving your current company, even if that means leaving Saint. As much as I hate to say that, if you're really passionate about that product and you're seeing that results and you want to go for it, that's fine. But if you try to do them both, and if you're wanting to hold on to your first existing business, hoping that this can just supplement, I would be really surprised if you're going to see them both grow. So Let me know if you've seen anything otherwise, and I'll be happy to take a look. But I've just seen it time and time again that the businesses of the leaders that choose to do this tend to go down or to go backwards, which is what we're talking about today. So that's the number 2 reason. The number 3 reason is, I think, one of the reasons why people will add another company or why their teams don't stop kind of producing, right? And that's fear and being afraid of the worst thing that could happen. And so with this, my little quote is, worrying is like praying for what you don't want. So if you're worried that something is going to go wrong with your company, or that you're worried that your sales are going to go down, or you're worried that your leader is going to quit and leave, you're worried, whatever you're worried about, you're essentially thinking on and praying for that thing that you don't know is going to happen. But essentially, it's like praying for what you don't want. And so if you're stuck in that fear, or you're living in that kind of fear of what's going to happen, or worse, if you're in consumption mode, because sometimes if you are feeling a little afraid, you can consume all the things, including this podcast or whatever it is. But what happens is, if you're living in fear, that causes inaction, which leads to shame and frustration. So fear leads to inaction, which leads to shame and frustration in your business. And so the opposite of this is inspiration and looking around you and realizing that, for example, in Saint, we might be in the shakeout. And I know if you're like, wait, what are you talking about? Go back and listen to some, previous episodes where our business is about 20% down or so from the height of last year. But we're still miles above where we were pre-COVID. This is tracking with typical things in the industry. There's nothing that scares me except for people being scared and diving into inaction or making the decisions out of fear. That's the only thing that worries me, but I don't allow myself, like I said, to worry about that, because essentially I can't live that. So what I live in is the inspiration mode for looking for those who are doing amazing things. So the class I told you about last night is a brand new artist that joined last month. And you guys, her in-person class, she had more than 20 people. It was 26 people said they were going to come. And I think I counted 23. I think a few didn't show up. And you guys, if you've listened to my party tips, I have a whole episode specifically on my best practices for having parties. You know that I say 6 to 8. But this sweet new artist, Lulu, she's awesome. I got there and she's like, yep, there's 26 people coming. And I was like, okay, we could do this. We could do this. And we did. And it was amazing. But looking at what Lulu did and the way that she took even the things that I had inspired in her with my top tips, she brought her own flair. She printed these awesome, which I think was inspired by another one of my directs, Drew, that I've talked about on here, where Drew had printed in a recent class that she did some little face, like a face map where you could write down the colors, which helped them know where our Saint products went. It was an easy way to write it down. I did our brand new starter collections on there, made it even easier for that. Lulu had her link on there. Drew had a little QR code. And so you can see right there that the inspiration for what's working in someone else's business then causes action, which then causes gratitude for whatever that result is. And you should be grateful, even if, for example, if Lulu's party had been a big fat bust or if it hadn't gone well, you still should be grateful for the learning experience. But if you're stuck in the other cycle, fear, inaction, shame, because you aren't seeing the results, how about look to someone who inspires you, let that spark you to take action, and then be grateful for whatever that result is. And so if you've been living in fear and that has led to inaction, think about that. Could that be what's causing your business to go backwards, maybe personally? Or again, is that what's maybe causing some of your teamies to not do it? And is that because you've made the choice to bring in another safety net, which again is going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because your team is going to look to you to be the most fired up one, the most passionate one about what it is that you're doing. So fear is the next reason why your business might not be going backwards. And obviously the opposite of that is choosing faith over that. Okay, next up is placing or funneling orders or controlling your rank. So this is something that honestly, I think is one of the biggest reasons that causes the shakeout in any company and in Saint to begin with, because I know, because I know that this is a practice that happens quite a bit with leaders, and it's tied to our sin nature of wanting to control the outcomes. And so what that means is you might be going for a big rank, and that requires, and every company's a little different, but maybe that requires someone hitting a certain leadership rank, which means they have to enroll people, and then they might have to hit a certain sales volume in order for them to, qualify for that. And so what leaders, and again, this isn't necessarily a leader if you're choosing to do this, but what people will sometimes do is they will like take their own business and they will funnel either actual orders or people, like when someone wants to enroll with them, they'll place them under someone on their team. Now, I know certain comp plan structures are literally designed for this, and that's a whole other situation, although I think that it could potentially cause some of the same problems. I'm not sure because I have never had experience in that, so I don't want to speculate that. But what happens is essentially instead of teaching your team to fish, or instead of building them up by having them take the action or get inspired by what you're doing, take the action, and then be grateful for the results, instead, you're essentially doing it for them. And the reason you're doing it is it's based out of like your uncertainty for what you think is going to happen. Like you're thinking like, okay, Lord, I don't know if this is going to happen, so I'm just going to make it happen. So the quote, and this is a Bob Goff quote, is the way we deal with uncertainty says a lot about whether Jesus is ahead of us leading or behind us carrying our stuff. So if you're not trusting that the Lord has the perfect timing for that next rank for you, that He's got everything, every idea for your social media content, every person who would join your team, every leader who has the potential to be your next solid leader, if you aren't realizing that He's the one that's providing all of that for you, it's likely because you're living it probably a little bit of in fear, but also a little bit in uncertainty, which is probably tied to, past experiences. Maybe you had a bad experience in another network marketing company. Maybe, you don't want to go back to being in debt like you were at one point. And so instead of trusting that the Lord is guiding you and will continue to bring those people, those ideas, the money, all of the things that are needed for you, especially if you're being a good steward of all of those things that He's giving you, right? That if you're essentially carrying that weight on your own, if you're carrying those fears, or like I talked to actually one of my leaders and in our Bible study, totally unrelated to business, we both talked about this in the last week, which is how I know it's from the Lord, that if you're holding on to these things and you're not bringing those dark, like maybe scary thoughts or those fears out there to someone that you trust, then you're keeping that darkness in. And if you bring it to the light and you hand that burden over to the Lord, He will release that from your shoulders and He will guide you, especially if you look to Him to guide you. And so if you have been tempted, and listen, I have done it, you guys. I have done it only a couple of times. And I know for a fact that that's the reason why my business went backwards, where I have either, because finally, technically it's not out of compliance within our company to essentially have someone who's going to order like an end user order from someone else. And I thought that it was helping them, but it wasn't. It was the opposite of empowering that person to do the work in their own business, and they quit. And even those leaders that we sort of made it happen, they're not really doing that much in their business because they don't have the fulfillment from having had it happen not in their own control, if that makes sense. And so if you have done that, where you've funneled an order, or I don't want to say even worse, funneled a person, because you guys, like, yes, it might be a bubble chart or a growth guide or a structure, but these are people, these are humans who all have the potential to do amazing things here. And if you're treating them like pawns, or if you're treating them like, something like in a game for you, you're making it about you. And it's never going to bring you the success in this business that comes from truly serving people based off of what they need and helping them dive into action and get the things done. And it almost always results in your business going backwards. I know that because I have been there, my friends, too. So if your business is going backwards, that's the fourth reason it could be, is if you have been placing structure or if you have been funneling orders. So ask yourself that question. And then finally, and this is kind of tied to my entire team name, which I totally stole from one of my top leaders, Tammy Williams. She's amazing. And we kind of co-led for a really, really long time. Not that we don't, we all, we all kind of co-lead together, but it's the fifth reason is keep it simple. How much are you overcomplicating what you're doing? Because one reason why your business might not be growing, meaning no one's duplicating on your team, people aren't having the same success as you, is because you've overcomplicated your processes and your systems. And instead of keeping it simple, which is going to be next week's episode, which is going to be the next little letter in the CHISEL acronym. So in that CHISEL acronym, the C stands for cash, the H stands for hope, the I stands for innovation, and the S stands for simplicity. And that's what I'm talking about here. So in that episode, I'm going to be breaking this down a lot further for your business with how are you communicating with your team? Is it in a million different places? Like, are you kind of like, is your upline doing it in one place? Like we use Telegram for everything, but maybe you're trying to put everybody on Voxer or Marco Polo or Messenger or something like that. So now they've got to download multiple apps and keep up with multiple things. Or is your process for acquiring new customers maybe a little complicated? So for example, your new person who joins you is actually going to be basically the enrollment starts before she even joins or before she even becomes a customer, because people aren't always going to do what you tell them to. They're going to do what they see you do. So if they can't do what they saw you do, because maybe it's like a fancy email, like this like complicated color match, for example, in Saint, or it's something that, you came up with yourself, or like you had a developer develop for you because you make the kind of income that you can invest in something like that, but it's not something that your team can also use, then it's going to be too complicated for them. So for example, when I color match, I just send a text message. I'm like, hey, thanks for your color match. They fill out my form that it's using a free software called Jotform that anybody can use until they start to get to the point where they get a lot of action on it, and then it might be worth the investment. But Jotform, I will get that Jotform in. I'll text them like, hey, I'll get back with you within 24 hours with your color match. And then I text them their color match and the link. And I now am matching almost exclusively with the starter collections because they're so good. So what I'm doing in that is, yes, I could afford to go pay and have in the past like this fancy system where I get this like, email like with all this like shiny information and all of this in there. But the problem with that is my new lady that joins, Lulu, she can't do that. She shouldn't afford to do that, but she can and did download Jotform, right? She can send a simple color match text out to whoever. And it's something that anybody can do. Oh, and the color matching, she can color match because she just picks from one of 12 different starter collections. So that is a perfect example of how complicated are you making your processes when it comes to customer acquisitions or your onboarding or, even again, your team trainings, communications. Really think about like how can you simplify? And again, we'll dive in much more into the next episode. But that's the fifth reason that your business might be going backwards, because you may be burned out from being the only one doing the work. And you're like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I thought this was supposed to be where I could help other people win. And that's where the fun and the fulfillment comes from. But they're not doing it. They're not having success. Well, it's likely because you're overcomplicating it and you need to keep it simple, sister. So that's my fifth and final reason. So just to review real quick, the first one is a lack of a focus within your business or a focused goal. Number two is kind of on that note where it's you trying to do more than one company and trying to add that additional revenue stream, probably based out of uncertainty. Or the third reason, which is fear, living in fear, which always leads to inaction, right? Instead of looking for inspiration and taking action. And then number four would be funneling orders underneath your team from your own personal business in order to control the rank or the structure in your business, which leads to it going backwards. And then the fifth and final one is you're overcomplicating and you're not keeping it simple, sister. So I hope that these reasons will help give you a little bit of insight into why your business might have gone backwards. And I'm not saying that this is all encompassing. There certainly could be other ones that might come into play. But I think that a lot of these things are what causes the shakeout drop when, at one point in the growth by promotion, or actually the hypergrowth phase, is what Brett Blake calls it. Like in that phase, like anybody can win, whether they're placing, whether they're, doing all the things. And then you put some COVID time, like fuel to that fire, and that leads to success. But when people don't see that same sustainable success because they did it in a way where they kind of either controlled it or they overcomplicated it, or they didn't have a solid foundation of leadership, which is just really inspiring other people to take action, right? That's the definition of a leader. And so they start to get scared, which means they jump ship, that they start to take on another company or they go to a completely different company, based out of that fear, and no judgment. And again, if that's something that somebody needs to do. But for me, understanding all this and knowing that, I think that's one of the reasons why my team has been a little bit insulated from this. I mean, I share my numbers each and every month, so you can go back and see there's like some things that are good, some things that are definitely being impacted. And I think a lot of that is probably coming from some of the things that are not within my control. But ours has definitely had a bit of a cushion. And I believe it's because I've been focusing on these things for years, and I've been instilling these principles in my leaders as well. So if you're on my team, this is probably not news to you, but hopefully this has been helpful in some way to you. And I can't wait to continue this conversation. And I will be praying for your business to soar and move forward instead of going backwards. So thank you guys for listening today, and y'all have a great week. Bye.